Welcome back to Careers at the End of the World. It's me, Jenn Walker Wall, your host and founder of Work Wonders Careers. And I am hard at work putting the final touches on a refreshed curiosity to clarity, which is where we help people do the prep work they need in order to initiate and engage in a job search or career transition. This is the exploration. This is the place where we take your curiosity and help you build clarity. And I'm walking through 6 dimensions of clarity. I'm not making any claim these are the only dimensions of clarity. I just think they're the most important when it comes to doing prep work before you start actively applying for jobs or actively engaging your job search. In the first episode in this series, I talked about 3 things that will stop your job search in its tracks. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. And last week, I talked about the internal dimensions of clarity, things that you don't even need job postings to think about. What are your responsibilities to contribute to the clarity question? If you haven't listened to that, make sure you do. I'll link to both of these in the show notes. Now, today, we're going to actively engage externally, or at least passively engage externally, I guess I should say, because we're still not applying for jobs, but we are going to look at jobs today. We're going to think about job titles. One of the major inspirations for this series and the curiosity to clarity refresh is the amount of questions I've gotten about career clarity and it being somehow analogous or equivalent to job titles. Like when people say, "Are you clear about what you want?" that they're talking about, yes, I'd like to be a program manager in the insurance industry. And that is a piece of the puzzle. We're actually going to talk about that piece today. But what I don't think people realize is that clarity is multidimensional. And there are multiple ways that we need to think about having you generate some clarity. And not just so that you apply to the right roles, but so that when you're applying to those roles, you can still make really good decisions for yourself, that you can be an active participant in the process, not someone who's just, on an assembly line waiting to get chosen. And this whole series is really a reminder that you have to choose. You have to continue making decisions in this process. It's not like I pick where I'm going and we shoot off. It's like you pick where you're going, we start, we learn something, and we make further refinements. That's really more like what this process looks like. So today I'm going to share 3 more dimensions of clarity that I think are really important to consider. And the first thing we're going to look at are job postings. And we're going to do that because one of the dimensions of clarity is having target roles. Target roles reflect the breadth of the roles that we will be focusing on primarily as job seekers. It's important to have target roles for most job seekers because we cannot make really strategic refinements to things like your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile, your portfolio, your bio, right? Like all the assets that we need to work on in the job search process require that we have a clear audience in mind. That's what makes them effective. We have to have a target. We can't just have a resume that works for any job. We have to have resumes that work for specific jobs or at least specific types of jobs. That's how this works. I know a lot of career coaches feel differently about this, but, I don't shy away from having a controversial career coach opinion. I don't think your target roles need to all look exactly the same. And what I mean by that is conceptually, it doesn't matter to me if they're in the same industry or if they have the same job title. That doesn't matter to me. To me, that's not what clarity is. It's not looking to pigeonhole you into a very specific type of job. Now, some people have clarity at that level. And it's often people who like what they're doing, are doubling down and moving up in a very, specific way, a very, traditional way. And a lot of people have 2 or maybe 3 kinds of jobs that they are considering. And that is good for me. Okay, that works for me. The reason I don't push people in the direction of articulating a single job title or 2, or even think about job titles at all. We'll just put job titles under scrutiny for a bit. Job titles can vary significantly from one organization to another. They can mean fundamentally different things. And 2, I tend to work with people who are very dynamic. Many would identify as generalists. And it's important that we accommodate people who are interested in a lot of things and can do a lot of things by offering them those opportunities that are in alignment with that. It is a beautiful thing to be able to do multiple things, to be able to show up in different environments and contribute and thrive. But when you're navigating a transition or a job search with those sort of attributes, it feels very burdensome. And what I want to suggest is that we give ourselves permission to be who we are and to like what we like and be interested in what we're interested in. What we don't want to do is let the fear of being too dynamic or too much of a generalist drive the job search. We want to say, like, here's what I'd love to do. Okay. And look for examples of those. When I say target roles, I think it's so helpful to actually go look at jobs that are posted and select some that are in alignment with what you'd like to pursue. And there's a few ways that I suggest people do this. One, don't feel obligated to focus on jobs you're qualified for. We're going to come back to that in a few minutes, but it doesn't need to be a part of your exploration process. And two, if you have worked, you've probably been burned out, exhausted, taken advantage of, felt undervalued in your job. It can make looking at and for jobs really hard. That can be a really monumental task because a lot of people look at jobs and there's this voice that kicks in and is like, that's probably not as good as it looks. It's not as good as it sounds. And I want to honor the wisdom of that because I think that is very true. It's very hard to have a job and not come out a little bit like, I see how this works. It's not how I thought. I honor skepticism in this process. So, what I want you to think about when you're identifying jobs or when you're even just looking at jobs, okay? Not looking for, looking at, is it intriguing? Are you curious? Do you want to learn more? It's not do you want to spend your life in this role? Would you accept it if it was offered today? It's about assessing your connection to the content of the job, okay? What you are able to see and know about a job in a job posting is limited, but it's not nothing. So, how do you feel about what's there? Is it intriguing to you? Do you want to learn more? If so, that could be a sign that you're on the right track. I do not require people to be like over the moon about job postings. Sometimes that happens. I love it when it does. It definitely creates a lot of momentum and energy. But in the absence of that, it doesn't mean the job isn't good or the fit isn't good or you're not on the right track. I think a lot of times we hesitate to get really psyched about a job because the skepticism has taken over. So we're going to work with the skepticism. It's coming along for the ride, but it's not sitting in the driver's seat. And that is, I'm paraphrasing Liz Gilbert from Big Magic there. Maybe you recognize that. It can come along for the ride, but it can't sit in the driver's seat. I like asking people to just review job postings and see what emerges from that. Okay. So give yourself a couple of weeks to really think about what you're seeing and then gather some sample postings, right? We have an exercise around this in both our job search community and in our Curiosity to Clarity program so that you have a way to assess what you're seeing and make sense of it and not letting the skepticism drive the process. One of the helpful things about having target job postings and going through the process to kind of collect and assess those is that we can start to see our qualifications. I think qualifications is a very underrated dimension of clarity. And if I could pick one thing, it would be this thing, because almost no other part of the process can move forward if we don't have a sense of our own experience and how that maps on to our target roles. Okay. So, qualifications, you might also think about this if you're making a pivot or transition or expanding the scope of job. This is transferable skills, right? This is where we do the work of understanding how our experience helps us meet the qualifications for specific roles. This goes into how we choose roles that we have a chance of actually getting. It goes into how we present ourselves for roles and the materials we might create to generate traction. Because people are so disconnected from their strengths and values in this process, we really need to ground your experience in your experience as a professional, and then figure out how to leverage that in a way so that you can identify jobs you are well aligned for. And this is not just like, do I like the job? But this is, am I going to be a strong candidate for the job? Is my resume going to stand a chance? What do I need to say on my resume in order to be a strong applicant? How do I translate my experience for different audiences to build traction and interest in my candidacy? In my mind, this is sort of like where the rubber meets the road. Like it's a real turning point here when clients can more easily identify like, yes, I'm qualified for this job, or this job's a little bit more of a reach. Like being able to do that is going to be a game changer because it's going to actually liberate you from needing a job title and having that be your be all end all of clarity. It's going to liberate you from that structure and free you up to pursue things where your experience is actually what you're pivoting on, not your job title. But it's also where you build a bridge between where you are in the preparation stage and where you'd like to go and how to start in your job search process. It's now giving us tactical insight into what your assets need to look like and what your strategy needs to look like as an active job seeker. This is a very, very alchemizing, opportunity here. We're building a bridge between the preparation phase and the active job search phase. And then the third thing that is really, really important, and a lot of people forget this, is you should have questions, okay? You should have questions. Why should you have questions? Because you are not going to know everything up front. We've already covered this. Clarity is not like an omniscient knowing. It is a foundation that we build on, we add to, we keep going. And you should have questions. You should have questions that you'll check in with about yourself. You should have questions that you'll plan to ask. You might even have questions that you'll negotiate for, that you'll ask in a negotiation. Okay. So think about that. This is something that you will probably have before you quote unquote start your job search. And you will probably add to it as you go through the hiring process for different opportunities. You will not learn everything you need to know from self reflection. You will not learn everything you need to know from a job posting. You won't even learn everything you need to know going through an interview process. So, actively curating and asking questions is going to be an enormous part of this for you. When we give ourselves permission to have questions as a dimension of clarity, it's a reminder we're not supposed to know everything. So if you have been stuck and your search preparation has been very stagnant, your exploration has been stalled, what questions can you give yourself permission to ask along the way rather than before you get started? Okay. What can we do along the way to further refine our sense of clarity? You owe it to yourself to know what matters, to identify those priorities, to turn those priorities into questions if that information is not easily, readily handed to us, so that we can build the clarity we need to make decisions along the way. Now, as you're listening to this, I am probably putting the very final touches on our Curiosity to Clarity program. I've put together a workshop that helps people operationalize this process. We have exercises and reflection prompts to help you work through the 3 things that will keep your job search stuck in its tracks, to help prepare you for your actual job search that you can actively engage. And in addition to buying this workshop, you can add on sessions with me. It's going to be coming out very, very shortly as part of our Black Friday offerings. Make sure you're on our email list. I will only be enrolling for this for a very short period of time. If you are interested, please check it out. It will not be available. It's not part of our permanent offerings. It's something I offer periodically throughout the year. And I don't have a ton of spots, to be totally frank. It's been a very, very busy fall. So we will start these sessions and the content will go live the very first week of December. I'm looking at December. And that's when the bookings will start on my calendar. That's when you'll get the access to our material. And we can start chipping away at this before the end of the year. If you need a partner to help you navigate your next steps here, please keep your eye on your inbox. It's coming very, very shortly. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to hit reply to any of my emails. You can find me over on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thank you so much for listening. I'll be going on a little bit of a hiatus just for the holidays and end of November, but I'll be back before the end of the year, so don't go too far. We'll see you soon. Take care.